With the latest batches of Hunter x Hunter chapters, Togashi Chihiro did something that not many fans of the series expected. And soon, I'm gonna use quotes here because no Togashi, you never know when soon is, but soon he might be ready to do the unthinkable, but arguably necessary for the next stage of the story, and that is the death of Chrollo Lucilfer.
Prepare yourself.
Now, I need to do a lot of rereading before diving into this topic because there were so many layers of complexity, and honest to God, I won't be able to get to it all in this one video. But I did want to focus on arguably one of the most iconic villains that have ever graced the halls of Shonen, Nobunaga.
Come, I'm ready.
Now, let me explain. Spoiler warning, just in case, spoiler warning if you are an anime-only watcher and have not read the manga. Though, you cats, honest to God, right now, maybe the next iteration of Shining Charizard cards. Extremely rare. That being said, Hunter x Hunter fans in the last batch of chapters got a very important Phantom Troop flashback, the origin story of the troop starting in 395. Now, Togashi in some ways kind of started from where he left off the first time we get this flashback, in a similar scene in 102. The VHS tape being tossed around between the founding members when they were kids. At that time, the tape was in midair, and then 293 chapters later, in 395, Franklin catches the tape. Both flashbacks in the manga are kicked off seemingly by Nobunaga Hamza. Second one for sure. First one is kind of unclear. In the anime, they make it Chrollo, but it also could be Nobunaga in the manga. But his train of thought in the second flashback is the most important thing here, where that lead up is because he sees parallels between the Haley Mafia family, which is one of the major Mafia families right now on the Black Whale Mark I ship going to the Dark Continent. He sees parallels between their current actions and growth and the Phantom Troop.
Fascinating.
Currently, some of the troop members are sidelining the mission to take a Hisoka and helping out the other two Mafia families, the Charar and the Shiyu families, in wiping out the Haley Mafia family. And one of the Haley Mafia family assassins is called Looney. He is a killer who tried to actually manipulate the Phantom Troop members, Nobunaga, Phaeton, and Sphinx in 378. But he fails in doing so, and then he switches up the plan to basically no plan at all. And in the next chapter, Nobunaga comments on this random targeting, a sort of wing it mentality and mindset is, and I quote, just like us, meaning the troop. Nobunaga then says the same thing in chapter 395, seeing the impact of Looney's death on his fellow Mafia members and how they started to refine how they operated and they became more craftier, more trickier. And then he clarifies to Phaeton and Sphinx after some pushback that this is how we used to be in the beginning, fueled by despair and anger, searching for a purpose. Now, the flashback itself that we get is not that long, only a few chapters, but it does show the main root cause as to why the troop became who they are today. A close friend of theirs when they were kids, Sarasa, got kidnapped, tortured, and dismembered, and then the founding members of the troop found her body strung up in a bag in the middle of the woods. Very graphic, paranormal activity stuff going on there, which is why
Austin had to blur the pictures that he did show and will show of that tragedy, because otherwise
You will die.
there's going to be a tragedy on my YouTube channel called Demonetization. It's Austin. Muy bueno. Muy bueno. So then how does all of this lead up to the potential death of someone like Chrollo Lucilfer? Well, during the flashback, we get to see and understand how Chrollo's character operated as a child. Of course, very inquisitive and talented, but also caring and emotionally positive. He would do things like bring fresh flowers to the graves of kids who were kidnapped and went missing in Meteor City because of criminals outside of Meteor City. At that point in time, Meteor City still had major issues of outside criminals, nefarious forces doing a lot of damage to their populace. He even had the idea of dubbing over the VHS tape, the one that they're throwing around. He had the idea of dubbing over that tape's contents, which they discovered was a Super Sentai show called Clean Up Rangers. If you're an old school cat, this might sound familiar.
Tell me.
Official translation calls them, and I quote, the Power Cleaners. Mighty sweeping power cleaners. Hey, yo, that is a blast from the past. Shout outs to one of the most legendary shows of all time, the original Power Rangers, without a doubt. But that being said, he had the idea of dubbing over the VHS tape for everyone's sake. The kids who couldn't understand the foreign language could enjoy the show. That is a freaking lad move.
Kitty.
Very lad status. But we truly get to see his talent on full display when he dubbed over all the male character voices himself.
Oh!
He was every male character, and he did this not just in a recording, but when the VHS tape wasn't working properly because the audio wasn't working, he did it live on stage. The different tones and mannerisms and tics, he nailed them down to a science at a very young age, which is extremely surprising. Just think of a live stage rendition of Jamie Foxx's impressions of various famous people. It is masterclass.
Hi, this is Mike Tyson. Welcome to Kentucky Fried Chicken. Yeah, can I get chicken and biscuit and some slaw?
This, I think, ultimately is very symbolic of the relationship between Chrollo and the folks that are closest to him, mainly the troop. He is them and they are him. Together, we are the spider. In chapter 114, those are the words said by Paku, and Chrollo explains in a flashback in that very same chapter, which is actually the end point of the most recent Phantom Troop flashback. He says, and I quote, "I am its heads and you are the legs. The legs do what the head says, but there will be times when the legs are more important than the head. If I die, someone else will take over. My orders are of the utmost priority. My life is not. Be sure to make the right decision. I'm only a part of the spider. What's important is the survival of the whole, not the individual." Now, these words are, of course, very important because these words are like the foundation, one of the main, if not the main code of the troop itself. And when we jump back to 396, in the recent flashback of the troop, I already explained how Chrollo was voice acting all the male characters, but this also includes the villains of the series. And these characters are, of course, the most inhuman of the characters of the show. But when he starts to voice act the main villain, the leader of the Ganguro monsters, it's then that his voice acting starts to really resonate with the crowd, but particularly with the Phantom Troop themselves. Now, the exact reason why they were particularly captivated at that point in time, you could argue various reasons. Like, for example, it could be them sort of instinctively sensing the leadership qualities of the, quote, little brother of their clique. Or let's say even tracing it back to them just living in Meteor City in the first place. Abandoned by unnamed parents, kids there never have their births officially acknowledged and don't even exist from society's viewpoint, as is stated in chapter 102. Therefore, from society's viewpoint, you can argue they're not even human, and they are subconsciously aware of that. Or it can even be some degree of Nen activating in Crow for the first time, as when we see him do that role, there's like a slight aura around his body. Whatever the reason is, the results are that most likely it was then that the kids, again, could instinctively feel this inkling of the kind of person Chrollo could be. Someone who is capable of being the most human individual, but at the same time, the most inhuman individual. And remember what I said before about Chrollo being the troop, well, these ideas of the human versus the inhuman in some ways do manifest within the troop, particularly when Kurapika captured Chrollo during the York New arc. They argue amongst themselves in 115 and 118 about the quote right thing to do in this situation. Save Chrollo or uphold the code of the spider and let him die so they can kill the chain dude, Kurapika. One side, particularly Phaeton and Sphinx, are being more cold-hearted than the other side. Therefore, you could argue more inhuman, but also more like proper villains.
You're just a big baby. Why did you go cry to your mama?
I digress. Chrollo is the most inhuman, yet the most human of the troop. This dynamic within Chrollo is actually expressed in moments like chapter 111 when he was responding to Gon's comments about killing people that have nothing to do with him. The idea is that he's still trying to understand himself, ultimately speaking. And just the idea of going through introspection to kind of figure out why he is willing to kill people so regularly that aren't close to him does show that he's very, very far from a mindless murderer. But he does kind of lean towards one side, the more inhuman side. A sign of this would be, let's say, his comments in 352. His comments about how corpses are very similar to puppets, showing no real remorse for desecrating and utilizing a person's dead body, which is very, very far from how he acted in the latest flashback when he clearly appreciated Saras's body being restored when she was in the coffin, and even just putting the flowers on the tombstones of the children that were murdered by criminals entering Meteor City. And even his confusion on Hisoka's willingness to continue to fight despite his massively unfavorable odds. At the end of it all, he finds humans to be very interesting, showing that despite a lot of his actions and motives, he goes through a lot of introspection, likely sorting out or even solidifying his own psychology and mental state. And low-key, why he personifies, quote, Lucifer, has that cross on his forehead and even reps St. Peter's cross on the back of his clothes all the damn time. Those spiritual themes tie into his inner thought process, arguably more than the visual representation of the quote bad guy who leads a band of scarily effective and brutal thieves. But of course, that is the aim in some ways, since he himself said in 397 that he would kill lots of people and live the rest of his life as a villain that would make the whole world tremble in fear, ultimately intending to do this for the purpose of protecting Meteor City and those close to him.
Wait.
But there is an issue. Hisoka. As it is always, Hisoka is a problem. He is a massive monkey wrench in a lot of operations and in a lot of schematics. I'm pretty sure you've heard that idea before of when you look into the abyss, it looks back at you. And you might say that for a very long time, Chrollo has stared into the abyss, hence him being so emotionless for like the vast majority of the story so far. Now, whether or not he's been blinking while staring at the abyss could be up for debate here. However, he just so happened to see Hisoka not staring into the abyss, but the man is swimming in it. He's swimming in the abyss, Michael Phelps style. Arguably, Yojiro Hanma style. Oof. Hisoka is what happens when the hunters get hunted. A true psychopathic predator that Chrollo ultimately failed to take down and failed to protect his family. The spider, with Hisoka killing Shalnark and Kortopi in a savage way in 357. And right now, in the Black Whale Mark I, on the way to the outskirts contents of the human world, Hisoka has the high ground. And the troop are not looking like the chosen ones. Not even close. Because of all of this, we are seeing a side of Chrollo that we haven't seen before. Look at Chrollo's reaction to Kurapika, Uvogin's killer, in 114. Calm, composed, even though he knew he wasn't going to die after reading Neon Nostrade's fortune. Uvo was a founding member, and the one that we see in this flashback, Chrollo initially chose to be the troop leader. But yet, nonetheless, in front of his killer, calm, composed, reserved, and so on and so forth. Peep chapter 366 and the energy that he exudes when he's boarding the Black Whale Mark I. Tremendous oodles amounts of bloodlust. We see then afterwards in 371 and 377 Chrollo actively trying to kill Hisoka along with the rest of the Phantom Troop, but he particularly is I think actually very clearly more invested in killing Hisoka than the other members of the Phantom Troop. Hisoka was under his watch, and Hisoka was able to again kill 2 of the Phantom Troop members. In 377, Chrollo tells the troop, "Do as you please.
Keep it simple.
Do as you please, and simply bring me Hisoka's head." This sort of cavalier way of approaching this situation is very different than how Chrollo has approached issues involving the troops suffering during York New and at other times. You can argue actually it's in a similar vein to the Haley Mafia family's way of approaching things at the moment, which is why I think Nobunaga's words in 379 and 395 about how they are like us, I think has a double meaning, not just for how the Mafia family is acting right now and how they're growing and evolving when new stresses come their way, but also how the Phantom Troop are somewhat acting right now, currently, particularly Chrollo. And then going even deeper, it shows the humanity within Chrollo manifesting once again. Even though he was, quote, emotionless during most of York New, in this situation, he can't contain himself.
Easy! Calm down, Broly!
For a very long time, he's been personifying the most inhuman, the leader of the Ganguro monsters. But after Hisoka's actions, and you see the rage, the human side, the cleanup ranger side, you could argue, is kind of coming out, and he wants to clean up Hisoka because it was the mess that you could argue he had to take care of, and he didn't take care of it. And this is truly hitting Chrollo the hardest because he's clearly no longer emotionless. And I think the reason is twofold. Number one, obviously, again, yes, Hisoka killed Shalnark and Kortopi. But 2, he killed Hisoka. He did his job to the utmost capability that he could. He killed Hisoka. And Hisoka came back to life.
That is crazy.
Oh my rubber nen. Hey yo. Oh my rubber nen. When that moment gets animated, it's going to be a classic, yo. And I use the word when purposefully, not if. Don't test me. When.
Damn right.
The reason why this must sting Chrollo greatly is because it's stated that he himself wants to die. Melody comments in chapter 116 about how he enjoys death always being by his side, following up in the same chapter internally urging Paku to ignore Kurapika's demands and bring the other troop members because he himself viewed himself to be a worthless hostage. The reason why he has this desire to die may tie to, let's say, the 3 years he spent preparing for avenging Sarasa. That's what we see at the end of the flashback in 397. Remember, Togashi already shown us a slight continuation of that moment in chapter 114. And during the point in time, we can see several of the true members look quite astonished to see how Chrollo has changed over the past 3 years. Machi even says to Paku, "Is that Chrollo?" Like, she's very surprised to see how Chrollo has changed. So the reason why he walks side by side with Death could be during those 3 years something happened to Chrollo. Or it could be even because he wants to keep what was written on Sarasa's corpse a secret, no matter what. And he said that he would, quote, take those words to his grave so that no one will ever know. So there are a host of reasons as to why you could argue he wants to die. But at the end of the day, Hisoka coming back to life is an upfront slight on one of the very things that Chrollo arguably wants the most: the death of himself, the death of the villain Lucilfer. So ultimately, right? Because we could go longer, but if I do go longer, it's gonna be like a 45-minute video. It is what it is. So ultimately, even though we're just going to the outskirts of the human world waters, I believe that this arc has a tremendous amount more to get to and cover. The more we find about Chrollo, the more likely his time is up. And I'm guessing we're gonna get another flashback, a continuation of the flashback that we got in 397 and 114. And right now in this arc, Chrollo is the most mentally vulnerable in a way that we have never seen before in the story. And Hisoka has all of the chips stacked in his favor. There are 2 other wild cards. One definitely, another one I think likely. The first one being the wild card of Kurt peek into the mix when it comes to Phantom Troop, for damn sure. But the number 2 is the ultra mega wild card that is Prince Seri, or Serainik, the 4th prince of the Kaken Empire. That, oh man, that is just levels of depth. Like Dante's Inferno, levels of depths. But another video, another damn day for that guy, for damn sure. And in the grand scheme of the story, we're probably making a major shift when it comes to main character focus, because the Dark Continent awaits. And whatever's going on in the Dark Continent, honest to God, makes the human world stuff look cute by comparison. And at that point in time, Jin Freaks has to take over, I argue, as MC for a extended amount of time. May even require a Hunter x Hunter Part 2, like a whole new series, just simply off of the fact that that Dark Continent material is going to be extraordinarily robust. I'll end on this note. In order for Chrollo, you can argue, to return to being the most human, the little bro that those kids grew up with a long time ago, you can argue that he needs to die. Probably physically, but potentially in a more metaphysical way. The killing of the villain that he has become. Not the killing of Chrollo, but the killing of Lucilfer. Togashi could roll that way as well. So as per usual, Hunter x Hunter, very complex. Tends to have a lot more layers than you would first perceive.